Story 1: The Lantern in Shawnee Forest. I used to think stories about haunted woods were just part of backwoods folklore until a night in Illinois' Shawnee National Forest showed me otherwise. That fall, I was doing a solo camping trip through the Midwestern parks, journaling and recording ambient sounds for a project. I'd parked near Rimrock Trail, hiked in 2 miles, and pitched my tent near a clearing where the tree canopy broke just enough to glimpse the moonlight. It was early October, and the air carried that crisp bite before the real cold sets in. You could hear every footstep on dry leaves, every twig snapping in the distance like a whip cracking. I was alone. I'd wanted to be. But that night the quiet turned heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. Around 2:45 a.m. I woke up to a sound that didn't belong, soft crunching footsteps circling the tent, deliberate and slow, like someone walking barefoot just beyond the nylon. I sat up, heart pounding, holding my breath as I grabbed the little folding knife I kept beside me. The steps stopped, and then came something worse. A flickering light, soft and golden, moving slowly outside like someone carrying a lantern. My heart dropped. There were no other campers for miles. I peeked through the mesh, and there it was, a man dressed in Civil War-era clothing, holding an old lantern with glass fogged from the inside, drifting past my tent as if gliding more than walking. His eyes met mine, but his face didn't move. No expression, no recognition, just hollow, searching eyes. And then he vanished into the trees. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, but I stayed. At sunrise, I found something worse than footprints carved into a tree beside my tent. Was a set of initials E.T. and the date, Oct. 12, 1864. I later found a reference in a local museum about Elijah Trenton, a Union soldier who went missing in Shawnee on a scouting mission and was never recovered. His lantern was supposedly recovered in 1911, found burning with no one around. People say he still wanders the trail at night searching. That trip ended my solo camping days. I still hear his lantern clinking in dreams sometimes. And whenever I think I hear footsteps on fallen leaves, my blood still runs cold. Story 2: The Screaming Tree in Mendocino. There's a remote stretch of forest in Mendocino County, California, near the Navarro River redwoods, where the trees grow impossibly tall and the fog moves like it's alive. My cousin Jess and I used to do photography hikes there in late fall when the air turned misty and the forest lit up in a strange emerald gray light. We were chasing a rumor we heard in town. Locals whispered about a tree called the Screaming Hollow, said to be the site of an old tragedy and to echo back the cries of the woman who died there. We didn't really buy it, but Jess was obsessed with weird stories and insisted we try to find it. After half a day of hiking down unmarked deer paths and across moss-covered bridges, we found it, a massive redwood with a hollow center big enough for a person to climb inside. It smelled like damp smoke, and there were scratch marks on the inside bark like someone had clawed at it from within. Jess climbed in to test the acoustics for a picture, and I remember joking, "Try not to summon the forest spirits." I shouldn't have. The moment she ducked inside, the entire forest went still, no bird song, no wind. And then we both heard it, a distant echoing scream. Long, desperate, and human. Jess stumbled out, pale as death, whispering, "It wasn't me." I didn't make a sound. We both stood frozen. Then it screamed again, louder, and this time it came from right behind the tree. I spun around, nothing, not a single living thing in sight. We didn't run, we fled, sprinting blindly through the trees until we hit a road and collapsed in someone's driveway. Later, a ranger we told just shook his head and said, "Y'all went near Widow Hollow, huh?" He told us the story of a woman who'd gone mad after losing her husband to a logging accident in 1913. She was last seen heading into that part of the forest with a lantern and a rope. They found the lantern and a noose in the hollow of the tree, never her body. The legend goes that she still wails in the woods at dusk, warning anyone who disturbs her resting place. We deleted the photos from our cameras that night, not because there was anything wrong in them, because in one of Jess's shots the hollow of the tree wasn't empty. There was something inside staring back. Story 3. The Silent Man. Near Lake Ouachita, Arkansas has some of the most underrated wilderness in America, and Lake Ouachita is one of those serene places you'd never expect to associate with terror. That's why I chose it for my solo camping trip last October, peace, quiet, and space to clear my head. I picked a secluded lakeside site just off the trail, far from any campgrounds. It was the dead of night, probably around 2:30 a.m., and rain had just started to patter softly on the tent. I was warm inside my sleeping bag, dozing off to the rhythmic tapping on the nylon when I heard something off. Not quite the rain. It was footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling my tent. I held my breath, heart pounding, trying to rationalize it. Maybe a deer, a raccoon, but no animal walks that evenly. Then silence. Utter silence. I slowly unzipped the tent flap just enough to peek through, and in the faint moonlight breaking through the trees I saw him, a man standing just on the edge of my campfire's dying glow, soaked from head to toe. No backpack, no gear, just standing there, watching the tent. I whispered hello and he didn't move, just kept staring. I zipped the tent shut and grabbed my knife, debating whether to run or wait it out. Then he spoke, a whisper so quiet I almost missed it. "You're not supposed to be here." I didn't answer. I just kept the knife clutched tight and prayed he'd leave. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally silence again. At dawn I emerged. He was gone. No footprints, no trace. I left immediately. Days later, I mentioned the incident to a local gear shop owner in Hot Springs. He raised an eyebrow and asked if I'd camped near Drifter's Hollow, a nickname I hadn't heard. He told me years ago a local recluse drowned in Lake Ouachita after getting lost and delirious in the woods during a storm. Some say his body was never found. Some say he didn't really die. Campers who stray too far from the trail report seeing a silent man soaking wet, just watching, waiting. I'd thought it was just a legend until he whispered right outside my tent. Story 4. The Screaming Cabin in Hoosier National Forest. I never believed in the old stories about the forest screaming back at you until the night I stayed near a crumbling one-room cabin deep in Indiana's Hoosier National Forest. I was backpacking alone, trying to retrace a civilian Conservation Corps trail from the 1930s when I stumbled upon the remains of the structure, 3 walls still standing, a chimney intact, and what looked like the remnants of a rusted stove. It was already late, and with a storm blowing in, I decided it was safer to hunker down than risk navigating muddy paths in the dark. I pitched my tent just a few feet from the ruins, ate a quick meal, and settled in. Around 1 a.m., the first thunderclap shook the ground. Rain hammered the tent. But it wasn't the storm that woke me fully, it was the voice. A blood-curdling scream, not close, not far, but definitely human. Then another, then silence, then a third more agonized than the first two. I threw on my headlamp and peeked out. Nothing. Just the flashes of lightning illuminating skeletal trees and the decaying cabin walls. I sat upright for hours, knife in hand, breath fogging in the cold air of the tent. As I began to nod off again around 3 a.m., I heard movement right next to my tent. Footsteps, not wandering, pacing back and forth, then a harsh sob, and in a hoarse, raspy female voice, "Get out before he comes back." I froze. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer, just wind now. I burst out of the tent with my light. No one. The voice had sounded less than 2 feet away. The next morning I packed up before the sun rose. When I made it to the ranger station hours later, I told the officer what I'd heard. He just sighed and said, "You must have stayed near the Taylor homestead. Don't know if it's true, but folks say the father went mad one winter during the Depression, trapped with his wife and daughter in that cabin. When they ran out of food, only he came out. Apparently, several hikers over the years have reported hearing cries, pacing, and a warning to flee always during storms. Whatever was out there that night, it wanted me gone. And I was never so happy to leave a place behind."